this is not a refugee issue. This is a scarcity issue, right? And we're not supposed to be fighting each other. We're supposed to be fighting the system, right? Like everybody has the right. Education should be free. Everybody needs education, right? Everybody should be getting. We're not supposed to be fighting each other for it.
Welcome to the Bridges Not Walls podcast. My name is Zenwei. I'm going to be the host for you today. And today we have two special guests. We have Jasmine and we have Erwan on my left. Today we're really going to be talking about education, which is something that a lot of us as Malaysians and citizens of this nation take granted for because, we have access to it. We grew up with it. It's really just very second nature to us. But we're going to be talking about how is that different for refugees because of their legal status. It makes a lot of things complicated, and in most of the cases they have no access to such situation, right? So today's intent of the episode is really to kind of explore what does that look like. We have two very experienced guests that are that have been serving the community and have gone through it themselves as well, right? So we're gonna start with maybe a quick introduction from the two of you. We have Erwan. You are the director of the Jesuit Refugee Services. You have so much experience working hand in hand with the community. For those of us who are not familiar with what you do, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and maybe some interesting experiences that you may have in this area?
Sure, yeah. So hi, my name is Erwan and I'm with Jesuit Refugee Service Malaysia, JRS Malaysia. So what we do is we actually accompany and also advocate for the marginalized people, specifically the refugees. But as an INGO, we also do provide or like extend our services to internally displaced people.
And Jasmine, you grew up here, and and also in terms of you're also selected for the replacement relocation program as well, right? You got scholarships as well. I know for a fact that that is not an easy journey as well, right? Why don't you share a little bit about what you are doing currently, and maybe what does that look like in terms of for your future as well?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jasmine. I have been in Malaysia since I was 4 years old. So I've been a refugee for like roughly 20 years. Currently, I work at Young Lives. I do comms. So basically, whatever is happening is.
It's part of your work.
Yes, it's part of my work.
You brought us together.
Yay! Yeah. So I mainly do advocacy for my fellow refugees. Not I'm not just telling my story, right? I'm also collecting everybody's story and sharing it with me to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you so much for being here. Let's start talking a little bit about let's say for example, like for yourself when you were here, starting at 4 years old, for example, right? Someone as young as that. And then we go on to talk about maybe the elder youth as well, that you probably have a lot of experience, right? What does that look like, right? Because me as a Malaysian, I just at 4 years old or 5 years old, I just go to kindergarten, I show up at primary school, that's it, right? End of story. But obviously it's not as easy for the community that we're interested in talking about today. What does that look like? Do they even go to school? Do they have access to school? What does that look like?
So what Malaysians think of as education for refugees is totally different from Malaysian children, right?
Yeah.
So private schools, government schools, international schools, universities, even they are for citizens and legal migrants, right? So refugee children, they are not, they don't belong in both options. So they rely on NGO schools and community based schools. So whatever you can think about school in Malaysia, like it's the total opposite.
Yeah.
Like we don't have kindergartens, we don't have a fenced school that children can play, children can have lunch. No, that's totally opposite. We're all stuck in like a one small condo room that is rented with one teacher teaching all 5 subjects, and all
And all
4 or
different
5
age
grades.
ranges
Yes,
as well, right?
yes,
And so-
in one room. So that's the whole day for refugee children, and those are the lucky kids. So the unlucky ones, they don't even get to go to school because schools are limited and they're far away. Some parents cannot afford school fees and all. So those are the unlucky ones.
Right. And after surviving that kind of informal, I would say informal, education, right? Then what are you seeing in terms of the older youth as well, right? What kind of, I guess, access or I guess facilities that is available for them, since whatever is applicable to a Malaysian citizen does not apply to them then.
Um, okay, I would say like for Malaysians, once you reach a certain age, right, you can, for us Malaysians,
Yeah.
I'm a Malaysian myself. So after I take my SPM, I can expect to have to apply for the UPU, and then I would go to a university to further my tertiary education. But the reality at our learning center right now, when I have been working with the adult learners who are refugees and asylum seekers, they do not have that option because of what's happening back in their countries. They do not have that formal secondary education, which even though like they're getting older day by day, but they just cannot expect to actually progress in terms of their education. So someone might be like 21 years old, who's, I mean, in Malaysia, that would be like the age where you go to university doing your degree and all. But for them, they are actually on the level of secondary level. Yeah.
So they're still learning the things that we would probably be learning at 14 or 15, which is basically like math and science and also language as well.
Yeah,
right?
or even lower than that. Some
Right.
of them have like very basic
reading ability.
Yeah, reading
Okay.
ability or like English proficiency in general. Yeah.
Right. And so there's another, in terms of education, recently there were some outcry when somebody, I think one of them, the news outlet picked up in terms of like having scholarships for for refugees and things like that. And obviously, us being Malaysians, we have knee-jerk reactions. We said really not nice things, right? We said that what about us? Is the common thing. Why are we taking like why are we not helping local Malaysians? And channeling all these resources and things like that. And behind the scenes, like you've mentioned, around the informal, like the really tough situation, what goes into that? Where are those resources coming from? And similarly for the school that you're serving at as well, right? Where are those resources coming in? Are they taking government funding, or where are those like fundings coming from, right? Maybe we can talk about that a little bit more, to kind of really just help our audience understand like what goes behind in terms of like funding all these different resources, right? Because if I think about a school, a lot goes into it, right? Like you have the teachers, you have all the curriculum. Somebody has to organize all these different logistics and scheduling and things like that, right? So what goes into this community schools and learning centers as well? Yeah. Maybe you want to start
Yeah,
first, Erwan?
sure. Yeah. I don't want to mention like any specific scholarship provider, but
yeah.
from the experience that I have, like networks or like connections that I have when it comes to like scholarship for refugees,
Yeah.
they are actually coming from the refugees themselves. Yeah. Or it could be from the public funding, like donation and all.
Right.
One thing that I can say for sure, that it is not coming from the Malaysian government. That's one. A lot of times it's again based on like from public donation and also from refugee members themselves contributing to one organization, and then that goes to the refugees themselves. Yeah. So that's how the scholarships are usually given to refugees.
Got it.
And there's not a lot like opportunities like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as a Malaysian, I don't see how is that taking something away from me.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if I think about like the as a Malaysian Chinese, and we reflect, and I reflect back in terms of like where our heritage comes from and stuff like that. Our ancestors came from China, obviously, and came here as well. It was a similar situations where we also had to actually fund our future generations as well. And similarly, I think that's what you're describing as well, right? And I think it's even harder simply because there's already no legal status. There's it's already hard to kind of to even have sometimes survive as well, right? But they're already thinking about seeding into their future generations as well. So I fully agree with you in terms of like, I don't think it looks like we're taking something away from the refugees as well. And maybe can you share a little bit about, perhaps your personal experience in terms of like, your journey as well, right? Because you received a scholarship, you're already you've done so well in terms of also like already pursuing your further education as well. What's that experience like? Or maybe some like challenges that we don't realize as well, right?
So when we talk about scholarship, just like
Yeah.
adding on a little bit,
Uh-huh.
there's no scholarships, there's no S behind, right? There's only one
One.
scholarship that all the refugees in the whole country is fighting for, and that's something that we're not supposed to fight for, right? Education is a right, and I also understand the POV from the Malaysian students as well. But this is not a refugee issue. This is a scarcity issue, right? And we're not supposed to be fighting each other. We're supposed to be fighting the system, right? Like everybody has the right. Education should be free. Everybody needs education, right? Everybody should be getting. We're not supposed to be fighting each other for it. And for my experience, just like this, right? Because there's only one scholarship. Every step I take feels very fragile. So it's like if I make one small step, everything will fall apart. There's no scholarship for me. There's no degree. There's no university for me anymore, right? So ever since I was young, I started school very, very late, around 9 years old. Because there was literally no schools at all, like no refugee-led school, no schools at all back then. And there was one small Myanmar refugee learning center. So I was there until I was grade 6. And most of the times, learning centers, after a certain grade, they cannot expand anymore because they don't have the resources anymore. So they will stop at year 6. So some older students will repeat year 6 until 3 years, until the school has funds to get another Form 1 class. So that's what happened. And I was idle there for 1-2 years, and I didn't have any more schools to go to. And then I left the school. I didn't study for 1 whole year. And as a growing child, that's also very isolating, right? Like
Right.
children need friends at school. So after a year, I heard of another school which has more grades, right? And that school was 2 hours away from my house. So every single morning, I have to get up at 4 a.m. to catch the first bus at 5. So after I completed my high school in that school, again, there's one door closed again, right? I cannot go to universities because of my status. I'm not legal here, so no universities will accept me. And that's 1 or 2 year of being idle, right? And after that, with a lot of help, with a lot of help from my school teachers, with the principal, the founder, with a lot of help, I was able to go to university to get my diploma with full scholarship, right? So that one I had to work very, very hard for. Even after that diploma, that was also another block because I couldn't get my degree. Because degree is so expensive, and another challenge is no university will accept me again. So it's like, okay, after diploma, I just literally gave up. I'm like, okay, this maybe is the furthest I can go, right? I cannot afford anything. So I'm like, okay, then let's work. So that's another door closing. Like, no one's gonna hire me. And I actually got an interview from a marketing company, and I passed all of the marketing, interviews, every single thing. And then at the end, they tell me cannot because your status is not recognized here. So that's another block.
Right.
But I was able to get a job at Young Lives, which is an NGO, right? So through Young Lives, I got to know this scholarship program by Fuji. So that's the one and only scholarship for refugee here, and it was a very very difficult journey, right? Like, because it's just only one chance.
Yeah.
You lose it, you lose it.
Yeah.
No university for you.
There's no take two.
Yeah, there's no take two. So
Yeah.
after that, I got scholarship for my degree. So currently I'm doing that degree. And then out of nowhere, like a miracle, right? I've been stuck here for 20 years, no hope of resettlement. And there is this program from Australia, literally out of nowhere. And
Right.
it's a pilot program that they're
Yeah.
trying out. So out of thousands and thousands of refugees, they are only gonna pick 6 from Malaysia. So that's a huge competition.
Right.
And I got in, and it's a bittersweet feeling, right? Because my friends are also as hardworking and as talented. So to see them losing out on these very rare opportunities are kind of heartbreaking. They also deserve to get the chance, not only me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine that because I'm obviously you're working very closely with young lives for the past couple of years. I know that resettlement doesn't come easy. It is something that shouldn't be taken for granted. I would like to really congratulate you for a brighter future ahead as well. And the story that you tell is really, really, really heartfelt because I don't think anybody would imagine that so many barriers at each juncture, right? Because we just cruise through each form and things like that. It got me curious as well. Erwan, what are we doing in terms of trying to kind of solve this complex puzzle, right? Because I can't imagine your job being easy as well. Because I'm listening that some they come at different stages, right? Their proficiency level is very different as well. And you have to also I would imagine that you also need to kind of look beyond just academics, right? You're also looking at their support system as well to be able to kind of make sure that they are able to actually fully focus at school as well, right? On learning as well. So tell me a little bit about what are you doing in that area, right, to kind of solve this complex puzzle?
Yeah. So while we believe that education or like academic performance is like very important for them to progress in life, but we don't have much capacity and resources to provide that to everyone. So what we do is through the certified global English language program, what we do is we do more than just providing or like delivering the curriculum. What we do is we empower them by learning the skills. So that's why we have like we see it as like a non-formal skills training rather than like a lesson or like a curriculum delivery. Yeah. So even the curriculum designed by our partner, one of our partners, is actually fitted into the refugee life who have experienced learning loss, especially like back in their countries, and how do they adapt into like another country and hopefully get resettled soon. So the curriculum is designed based on that. Yeah. So, and that's why I think one of the main focuses that we have is accompaniment rather than just providing service. We won't say that we are fixing the problems or we are trying to solve any problems here. We just want to be there and just listen to them or like try to understand where they are. Of course, we cannot do that 100%, but we try to be there as much as we can. Yeah. So on top of that, we also realize that there is a need on the community level. So that's why at Charis Malaysia, we just actually explored a new program, which is the mental health and psychosocial support, MHPSS, where, and then again, because of limited capacity and resources, we do not provide like one-to-one support when it comes to mental health. Because and then we find out that, when we visit a lot of CBOs and also learning centers, we find that one strength that we see in the refugee community is their togetherness or like the sense of community, right? So that's the model that we want to uphold, like we want to emphasize here, the community level intervention. So we would actually provide trainings to the community leaders so that they can provide, so they themselves can provide the services to the community members rather than we directly go to the community members and try to be there for them.
Yeah. That's really interesting. But I think because even in the first episode, I think the sense of community and the mention, I think just mere mention of the word community comes up so often. And even I think it's just all aspects of life, including education as well, right? Where community support is so important. And you talk about accompaniment, it's something that is really undervalued, but very, very important as well, right? In this context where we're probably stretched in all angles. This is something that is probably one of the least that we can do as well to kind of make them feel supported. And we talk about isolation, right? So I'm pretty sure that's definitely valued as well. Well, I mean, in terms of the broader approach, right? Because it sounds like hey, we're trying our best to go by. We're trying our best to like really we're trying our best to kind of like go by. We're trying our best to kind of like provide for each other as much as we can. Are there certain changes that you wish that probably Malaysia would take, right, to kind of improve their approach in towards like refugee education? What would that look like, right? Yeah. Want to go first?
Very hard question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a wish list, right? I mean, you don't have to you don't have to be you don't have to come up with the exact solution for it. But perhaps it's a little bit of a wish list, right? That would make things, meaningfully easier or meaningfully impactful as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, like, I've been thinking about this, like, if you cannot make it easier, do not make it more difficult. Yeah. So because we have experienced some challenges when it comes to like providing this opportunities for our refugee and asylum seekers friends. There were times where we had to close down our operation. And I mean, we're still new, we're still figuring things out. Even doing it on site is like something quite challenging. But because of there's a lot of raids and arrests happening, especially and it has been very unpredictable recently. So that has caused fear and anxiety among our students, because we do not only provide the services to registered refugees, we also extend it to asylum seekers who are not yet registered under UNHCR. So they have they possess the risk of like getting arrested and detained. So yeah, like I said, if you cannot make it easier, do not make it more difficult. That's just my wish for now. Yeah, of course, I want things, for me personally, I want things like as easy as Malaysians for our refugee friends, but that seems to be very far. It's not within our control right now. It requires a lot of changes in terms of like the systems and governance. But yeah, I think just letting them getting what they deserve,
right,
and not make it more difficult for them. I think that is my biggest wish as of now. Yeah.
Right.
I think they can. I wish for a change in perspective, right? So instead of treating refugee children as a charity case, where thinking of them as taking away the resources, thinking of them as doing bad things, it's like giving it to them. I think another perspective is that we can also contribute back to the country, right? And there are a lot of talented refugees around the world that you can see very successful cases, right? Like and in a way, we're not only taking away, but we're also not taking away. In a way, we also want to contribute back to the country that we grew up in, right? Like for me, it's already been 20 years, so it's almost like
as good as
as good. Yeah. So I'm like, I also want to contribute back to this country, And when there was a explosion in Putra Heights, the petrol station, a lot of the refugee community saved up money to, donate back. So those are the things that we can do. And I have a friend that wants to be a doctor, a nurse, and all. Like in a way, when when they get into these type of positions, they can contribute back. They can, help the Malaysians. They can provide health services to the Malaysians too. So it's not only just taking, but also giving back. So so that's the perspective change that I wish.
Yeah. I mean, from listening to the both of you, what is currently available, it is already very bare minimum, and a lot of it is self-initiated, and it's all donations. None of it is taxpayers' money and stuff like that. And you talk about the change of perspective. I would then argue that if you continue to make things quote unquote harder, it actually takes more resources to actually do that, right? Yeah. So you talk about like taking things away. I would think that some of this enforcement perhaps can be better used in areas that may need it better, right? Because from what I'm hearing so far, it seems like we're already doing what we can with the little that we have, right? So it's not by adding enforcement is just, just wasting resources in a way, right? Why are we policing in areas that, may not benefit, right? And I really like your perspective around like, hey, in terms of like contribution back to the country and things like that. I think it's very hard to argue against diversity as well. We have so many different perspectives that has helped to shape our country, right? We are not a monolithic country with one culture, right? So just adding more different cultures coming in is definitely going to be more beneficial for us in the future as well. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your stories today. I guess maybe as a final thought in terms of one thing you wish perhaps Malaysia would know more about education for refugees, what would it be?
Yeah, maybe I can start on that because
Sure,
I feel like I have been in the education sector for I think close to 6 years now.
Yeah.
And I did not start working with refugees. It was with the local children. And when I started working with JRS, that was my first exposure to working directly with refugee members. And when we visited like the CBOs and learning centers, I just had the realization that all this while I sit down at a kopitiam with my friends, there's actually like just a floor above me is a refugee learning center. Like probably like there are 60 kids there with just 2 teachers doing whatever they can with the limited resources that they have. But they have to do it quietly because they are afraid not just from the local authorities, but also from the stereotypes from the local community itself. So they are doing what they deserve to be doing, but in hiding. Yeah. So I wish Malaysians would be more empathetic towards that when it comes to that. Like, they actually, you might not see it in the professional sector, but we might not know that the people who are, serving us every day at a kopitiam or like doing our nails, doing our hairs, they are actually, those community because they don't have the other choice, but they have to do that. And while not contributing like directly to the Malaysian economy, but they are actually contributing like a huge thing to the local communities as well. So that's what I would like Malaysians to understand. Yeah.
I think for me, something that I realized very recently was being a student that finished, high school and then diploma and then, planning to do degree and all. I felt like getting to plan your life is such a luxury. It's not it's not freely done like like the rest of the Malaysian kids. Like you wake up, you think about what to eat, you think about what you want to do for your future. If you want to be a a doctor, these are the pathways that you can go to study and all. Like for us, it's not like that, right? So when I was chosen to resettle for the Australian program, stability was something that is very foreign to me. So it's like, what do I do now? I have all the freedom in the world, so what do I do now? And it's such a very emptying feeling, like a very empty feeling. I felt like I wasn't even, a proper person. So that's the feeling that I got.
Got it. Yeah. I think it's really a good reflection, and I've learned a lot from the both of you. And I hope that for those of you that are listening as well, that you've learned something about refugee education as well, right? It's something that perhaps we didn't realize, and perhaps after listening to this episode, I would probably invite you to also reflect back on your education journey in terms of like what you've actually benefited from, and how that would actually benefit somebody that has limited access to all this as well, right? So I want to thank you, both of you, for coming here and sharing your experience, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Bye.